Hey, this is the Hard Truth of Tony Shaffer, powered by 6 Hour, Never Settle. I had a choice of what I carried in combat. I recommend you carry the best, and I carried the best. You should carry what I carry, and that is 6 Hour, Never Settle. And by the way, today I got out of my kit bag my actual 320 compact carry. This is what I carry most of the time when I'm out and about. I have a go bag, and I got a question about this yesterday while I was in Tampa. You know who you are, and this is what I was asked about, and I did want to show it off. This is what, and by the way, you can't go wrong with the Wilson Combat grips. I like those a lot. It's something about that pattern. It fits brilliantly in my hand. The purchase is amazing. So anyway, Sig Sauer, Never Settled. Again, I had a choice what I carried in combat. I carried the best. This is the best today. So I would go with this if I were you, or some form of it, just saying. Now, by the way, these are like Legos too. You can get all sorts of different options. So Swiss America is someone you need to contact to get a free copy of their Secret War on Cash. Secret War on Cash newsletter, 800-289-2646. Tell them Tony Shaffer sent you. Hugely important. There's all sorts of bank closures coming up, all sorts of economic headwinds that we're going to have to face no matter who wins in November. I recommend you check these folks out because they can give you some really great advice on what to do regarding making your portfolio impenetrable or impervious to changes, or at least more impervious than otherwise. So check them out. Swiss America. Again, call them 800-289-2646. We're Project Sentinel, projectsentinel.com. You can hear our past shows on thehardtruthwithtony.com. It's a great site. It has all of the content and discussions that we've had and more to come. Speaking of discussions, we are now ready, Chris, to bring in our guest today, Ken Rapoza. Ken is an industrial analyst for the Coalition for a Prosperous America. That's a good thing. Prosperous America is a good thing. Former staff correspondent for the Wall Street Journal, great publication that does real journalism. Imagine that, real journalism in the age of opinions, draped as journalism. So, and a senior contributor for Forbes. By the way, I like Forbes. I've been looking at a lot of their stuff lately, covering China since 2011. So, Ken, welcome to the Hard Truth.
Thanks for having me on, Tony. Appreciate it.
So, so we're going to talk about a number of things, some of which I think you know, some of you don't, but you'll be able to handle them. Just saying, this is not a gotcha show. It's one of the, I just want to have you.
That's okay.
I wouldn't do that to you. I wouldn't do that to you.
Yeah.
So, but I do appreciate the fact that you're a real journalist. You do real research. And one of the things we're going to talk about today is your latest op-ed, which is titled, "Is the Pentagon's Continued Funding of the F-35 Throwing Good Money After Bad?" It's in the Washington Times. There it is. And no secret, full disclosure for the audience, I used to work for Boeing, for Phantom Works, doing some research. I don't work for Boeing now, so please take that in mind when you hear my opinions about the F-35, which is not made by Boeing, just saying. So I don't want to be thinking here that I'm underhanded or not disclosing my background fully. But I'm not a fan of the F-35. So, Ken, I want you to run through, just summarize your article. I don't give away everything, so people still want to go read it. But tell us a little bit about your article and what your thinking is regarding the F-35.
Sure. So this whole issue of the F-35 came up because the Air Force and the appropriations team on Congress, those are the guys who come up with the money that goes to the Defense Department, are tossing around the idea of how they're going to fund what's called the Next Generation Air Platform, or NGAD, I believe is the acronym, Next Generation Air Dominance Platform. So when I refer to it, I'll call it NGAD. And what NGAD is the sixth generation American fighter plane that's going to replace some of the fighter planes we are accustomed to now, like the Raptor and like this F-35, which some of the top guns would call, I believe it's called Fat Amy. So the F-35 has been around for a long time, over 20 years. It is the plane on aircraft carriers. When you think of an aircraft carrier, you think of a Top Gun plane on it. It is most likely this, right? This is the plane. This is the fighter plane, and they've been around for a long time, as I said. And in order to upgrade them, a lot of money. The Pentagon is spending a lot of money to upgrade these planes. And of course, they're good for about 8,000 miles, and after that, They got to be refurbished. I mean, think about it, because I know I'm not talking to Pentagon or Defense Department or Boeing engineers or Lockheed Martin engineers on this call. So I'm not, and I'm certainly not one of them. And I don't want to get into the weeds on that. But imagine if you had a car that was only good for 8,000 miles, and after that you had to put a new engine on it. Well, that's like the F-35. It doesn't need a new engine, but it needs different machinery and different sort of navigation equipment that's got that to modernize it, and that's costing a lot of money. And so what the government wants to do is they're saying, is it worth keep throwing money at the F-35 because you don't have any new plane to replace it? So of course, the Pentagon wants to have a new plane to replace it, but the problem is, and this is a big problem, is that it's totally sci-fi. Okay, it's basically 4 planes in one, and it costs even 3 times the price of an F-35, which goes for about $115 to $133 million a plane.
Yeah.
So they're really in a catch-22. It's like, how do we get NGAD to sort of be a sci-fi, hybrid plane that's both you and I piloting in the plane, but also drones, right? A drone system that can accompany the plane, or it's a system plane where I'm in my plane, but I could control missiles from the ground rather than have to make a call. I could do that all from my plane. It's an all-in-one system. That's the new technology. So if we're going to do that, which is going to cost more than the F-35 that already exists, if we're going to do that, where is the money going to come from? So the Air Force is saying we might have to make some cuts to this program, the NGAD program. And as we make cuts, we have to keep this F-35 alive, which, as you said in your opener, a lot of people don't really like the F-35. And are we throwing good money at bad because you're just replacing parts to this 30-year-old system, and it's not the new 6th generation fighter plane. And of course, again, we just got through at the NATO meetings in New York, DC a few weeks ago. Pentagon is always going to say to you, and the guys who are looking for money from the appropriations staff on Capitol Hill, well, China's got the 6th generation plane. They're building one, so therefore we have to build one. Yeah. So, but that's where the whole issue of the F-35 came in. Replace it, fix it, or are we going to have the NGAD and spend a fortune on building the next generation fighter plane?
Well, let's walk through this a little bit, because I think first off, the Chinese systems are not as advanced as ours, I don't believe. But let's talk about that separately. I think it's like, okay, there's something there, but if you really wanted to be focused on air superiority, you should reopen the F-22 production line, which the F-22 is, I think, still by far the most advanced and capable air superiority fighter on the planet. I don't think the Russians have much they could do against the F-22 at this point, but I'll get to that in a second. Secondly, this whole idea that you're replacing multiple platforms with a single airframe. Gee, where have we heard that before? I think a guy named McNamara in the 1960s, and they tried it with the F-4. The F-4 was supposed to be the replacement for a number of things, and it didn't really. I mean, the F-4, don't get me wrong, I love the F-4. I was a kid in the Philippines. My dad was a maintenance officer on F-4s, so I saw firsthand that, it's a great airframe, but it's not. You can't do everything you want with the F-4. And they tried that also with the F-111. The F-111 is supposed to be another be-all. Oh yeah, we can have everything done with one airframe. So I think you always fail when you believe you're going to be able to do everything. And one of the things I'm concerned about, my friends over at Project and Government Oversight at POGO have been fighting almost single-handedly the battle to maintain the A-10. The A-10, I think, having seen it in combat, is phenomenal. It's an aircraft that is designed specifically to do one thing and do it very well, which is ground support. It should be an Army aircraft as far as I'm concerned, because most of those guys are much more oriented towards ground missions anyway. But just the loiter time, the dwell time, the ability to sustain itself in non-permissive environments, the A-10 is able to do things that the F-35 couldn't do. Plus, the number of sorties you'd need to do, you'd have to have 4 F-35s to do what one A-10 could do regarding just the ordnance on target. So I'm not a proponent of the F-35, and look, I like the F-15. I'm a Boyd guy. I think Boyd came up with some phenomenal aircraft. Boyd and his team did the F-15, the F-16, and the A-10, and they're still flying to this day. I think they figured out you can't have one airframe do everything. You're just not. Now, some of those airframes can be mitigated or migrated to do other things, and that's fine. But the idea here that you've picked one airframe using stealth as the prerequisite. And basically, it's nothing more than a flying gas tank, as far as I'm concerned, that has less than adequate air performance characteristics to its replacement. It's supposed to replace the F-16, which I don't think it can do as well in combat. It's supposed to replace the A-10 regarding the ground mission, which I know for a fact it can't. So do you agree with my assessment that the F-35 is not the be all and end all that we should be looking at right now?
Well, a lot of people agree with that assessment. I'm not a Air Force guy, so I'm just going to tell you what I hear people say.
Sure, please.
As I said, and I talk about in the op-ed, I mentioned some people who said that we're throwing good money at bad, but these people, of course, are advocating for the NGAD system, which is an even more expensive program. And the Air Force is saying, well, we don't know if we want to get we don't really know if we want to be able to get the money for this program. So
yeah.
What good is the F-35, as we have seen on a carrier, when they're going against maybe 10 autonomous small little drones? It's not good. But then again, the new NGAD fighter plane that they're talking about, which will be accompanied by drones, That's the whole point of it. You're flying a plane and you have your drone. I think it was called the like your loyal wingman. That was the name they called it at the time. They're not using that term anymore. But the loyal wingman was an autonomous plane that accompanied you and me flying this new fighter plane. Yeah. So, like I said, it's 4-in-1. And how good is that going to be against drone attack? I guess it'll be better because you have the drone. But so it's a new way of fighting war. It's a new way of air superiority. And I think the Pentagon, because you're fighting against guys who have low cost drones, and if your carrier can be taken out by $4,000 drones, and your F-35 can't take it out because it's like attacking a beehive, and you're being swarmed, and your plane is just might not be able to handle that. Is the new NGAD platform going to be able to do that? That is the question. It might, if you have the drones attached to that, and then the fighter plane. Again, you and I are the top gun in the plane. We could say drones. It's like Star Wars. Drones. Hit this bogey over here at whatever. Maybe that'll work. Yeah. But they are going to make cuts to this system, to the NGAD platform. We don't know what the cuts are going to be like. They're still in discussion of this. And as they're making cuts on this, they're going to have to keep spending money on the F-35. Unfortunately, many people don't like the F-35. They're going to have to keep it going because this is the carrier plane. This is the carrier plane that we have in numbers. It's not the F-22, which I believe the NGAD system is really designed to retire the F-22. Yeah, so I
think it's premature based on my understanding.
Right. So the F-35 is like, as far as the Air Force goes, the consensus is this baby's going to fly for longer. They love that plane there. And again, maybe it's the price point. I don't know what the price is for a plane for an F-22. Do you know what a Raptor price is? I don't know. But
That's a good question. I don't off the top of my head.
But I know these F-35s are going to be around, and as many people will say that it's not equipped for modern warfare, which is going to come at where you're going to have a drone fleet coming after you, and the NGAD is going to be more of that, where you have a plane with a drone fleet that's going to be able to handle this. But the Air Force is saying we want to build it, and it's great to build those things because it's good for our American industrial base, and that's where you get innovation. That's where you get new technologies and new ideas that eventually go into the commercial sector years later. We're talking on the internet. That was a Defense Department program,
of course,
many years ago. So it becomes commercial later on. It comes to the retail consumer right later on. So that's good. That's a good part about that. But is there money to do it? If you're complaining about the money you're throwing at the F-35, which a lot of people are, how do you say, well, let's just triple that and build this new 6th generation fighter? That's the debate that's being held right now. I think, knowing that the Defense Department always gets its way, I think that they're going to get its way in the 6th generation fighter, and all they got to do is hold up national security and the fact that China is building one, and they'll get it done. It might be trimmed, but I think they'll get it done, and the F-35 eventually be retired. Probably not.
So years. That's a great summary, and I appreciate your again reframing it in such a way that the budget issue is going to be pushed no matter what. The Air Force likes expensive toys. Period. At the same time, we have to recognize that. And by the way, I'm not slamming innovation. Innovation is a great thing, and you point out that DARPA and its work created the. I thought it was Al Gore, but you corrected the record there. Thank you. And
yep, Al Gore. He created the internet,
that's
and
right.
He's also the father of climate change science.
There you go. Well, my climate's pretty changed because it's hot in my backyard right now.
He's got a diverse portfolio of innovative ideas.
That's right. But my issue is this. We have the B-52. It's going to be flying probably past the time I'm in my 60s. It'll be flying probably past near the time I die at the rate we're going, because that thing has been around since the 40s, 1940s, not 2040s, 1940s. It'll be flying probably close to 2040, nearly 100 years. So my belief is that people can be very practical and update things almost indefinitely if the mission profile is such that you understand what the threat is. And the B-52, God bless them, I've had friends that's flown that thing. I've known people fly it. That thing has been mission capable for forever and will be for a while. My concern is the Air Force seems to always like bright, shiny objects which are untested. So is there any threat profiles or information? You mentioned drones. Trust me, I think drones are going to be the next big thing we have to deal with, both at the macro and micro level. Has the Pentagon actually done any testing to justify the idea of going down the path that they're wanting to go down regarding threat?
That I don't know off the top of my head. I know they're going to tell you is that, China is developing this. We have to. The F-35 is not equipped to fly off carriers and ward off a bunch of drones. And the mission that it does do, which I'm not an Air Force guy, I'm not a defense industry analyst in that regard. So I only look at it from 20,000 feet up. They say that the F-35 has passed its prime. A lot of people say that. But again, as you mentioned with the B-52, it's a plane that people like. It serves its purpose. It's a carrier plane, and it's going to be used for a long time. Because, again, if you're going to develop the 6th-generation fighter plane, which the Air Force wants to do, it's not going to be done tomorrow. It's not going to be done next year. It might take 3-4 years for you even – we don't even know what these things are going to look like. Yeah. Really. It's just drawing, so it's going to take years, and in that year time frame, it's going to be the F-35. So the question is, do we say, okay, NGAD, we don't know what we're going to do with the fighter plane that's going to replace the Raptor. We don't know what that's going to look like yet. We're going to beta test it, whatever. That's top secret still. We don't really know what the plane's going to look like yet.
So, well, to that point, then
maybe we say let's for NGAD for now. Let's make sure we have the autonomous plane. We got some powerful drones, and not the drones that we've always had, the big ones, the big surveillance drones, but something that's small, right? And something that can, like a suicide drones that say China has, or that we've heard of the Houthis in Yemen using against commercial ships traversing the Red Sea, for example. Maybe you're investing in that, and we certainly do have the capabilities to do that in the United States. We don't have a lot of companies that do that. China really runs that drone market, but maybe a lot of the money goes to there in the meantime. In order to complement the F-35, really, because the F-35 it's going to stick around, because the NGAD 6th-generation plane is not going to be built anytime soon.
No, I get so, but that's part of the issue. Now, I when I was working with Boeing, I also worked for a company. The company I actually worked for was Applied Systems Intelligence, ASI, out of Georgia, out of Atlanta, the northern Alpharetta, Georgia, and they were an artificial intelligence company before AI became robust. This is back in about 2007, and they were working on the concepts you're talking about, the idea of having autonomous or semi-autonomous aircraft being able to fly alongside a manned airframe. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't think that we are there yet. I think there's a lot of things that have to be worked out, and the idea that we're going to gamble on a whole new generation of aircraft without having worked out the details is a bit dangerous, in my opinion. And again, I'm like you. It's like I'm not an aviation specialist, but I've been involved in some of the discussions at the operational level, so I'm just kind of skeptical. So from your research, do you feel comfortable that the Pentagon is going to make a wise investment with this follow-on 6th-generation fighter?
Look, I don't think it's going to. Here's what I have to say about that in a nutshell. Is it going to be a wise investment? Like, oh, wow, I this was a steal. We got it for nothing from Lockheed Martin, right? No, it's not going to be a wise investment, because these are very expensive things. It's like, is it an investment to you and I to go buy a 300-foot motor yacht that you can land a helicopter on? It's probably not a wise investment, right? Really. But for the Pentagon and for the Defense Department overall, and what we care about at the Coalition for Prosperous America is, right, as far as the NGAD system goes, is that you're going to have an industry that's going to grow out of this. You're going to have contracts that are going to build more drones. We have a problem in the United States with drones. Most of the drones not made here. They're all made in China. Okay. That NGAD would change. Okay. The new technology, the new software, and whatever else goes into putting it in the navigation system of the nose of an aircraft, however that's going to work out, all that new technology is going to go in R&D. You know, maybe it's like being a venture capitalist, right? Maybe you're throwing darts at a dartboard, you're missing 9 times out of 10, and the one time you hit it right down the middle, and it was Google. Okay. And then that becomes a product that you and I are using 20, 30 years from now, whatever that may be. Maybe it changes the commercial airlines for you know, the way it is now is, as you know, if you've ever flown today, commercial airline traveling is nothing like it was even 10, 15 years ago.
Oh no, I had to travel yesterday. It sucks.
Right. It's a complete disaster. So who knows, maybe 10 years from now, because of NGAD, or 20 years from now, we could have the option of flying the American Airlines plane, man-piloted, all the 2 accompanying wingman drone planes that are like half the price, and the technology works, and your flight is basically 3 for 1. What was that going to get done? Do we believe American Airlines is going to invest in that? Do we believe Delta is going to invest in that technology and that product line and come up with that innovation? No, it's going to come from the Defense Department. So when I think about that as someone someone who wants to build out industry and manufacturing and innovation in the United States, like, okay, it is a waste of money. The government's going to spend all that money, and most of it's going to be garbage. But at the same time, I can see it as something that's important for American industry in the future. NGAD is going to get done. It's definitely going to happen. It might not be as big as they want. We might never see what this 6th generation fighter plane looks like, maybe in 10 years. And for that reason, the F-35 is going to be fixed and refixed and revamped for the next 5 to 10 years. That's my guess. I don't know. I'm not Top Gun. But that money that's spent on that platform is going to be very important for future technologies in the United States. Even as I said, just imagining flight for you and I in the future, flying an unmanned commercial airline. Right? That technology is not going to be developed by American Airlines or Delta. It's not. It's going to be developed by the Defense Department. And if one day we are able to do those things, which make flying maybe more affordable or more convenient or more on time or whatever it may be, whatever is opposite to what we're dealing with now in the airline industry, that would be a good thing. And that will never happen without something like NGAD. So I'm trying to explain it to you, Tony, and to your listeners, is like, what is so good about the government spending $1 bazillion on something we really don't need? These Star Wars fighter planes, you know what I mean? We're not getting an alien invasion. Okay, the Chinese are going to have their 6th generation fighter plane, but do we really believe China is going to send 6th generation fighter planes and in attack formation, you know, over the Pacific and raid, you know, LA or raid Taiwan? I mean, do you really believe that? And if so, do you really need to have similar fighter planes to take that whole system down? I mean, how many fighter planes would China even have as a 6th generation fighter? 10? I mean, it's not an unlimited surplus of 6th generation fighter planes. You know what I mean? So I mean, I think it's going to get done. I think the Air Force is in trouble in terms of what they envision it to be. But I think overall for the United States, that it's important because we're going to get a lot of new products out of there for us. Just as simple as we talked about earlier with the internet. So it is a waste, but it's a waste that these guys always do. And you know,
well, Ken, I got your point, and I don't disagree with it. The problem is I've seen this stream of AI and autonomous systems since literally, back in 2007 when I was working on this. I mean, I worked on the Boeing system of systems. They called it SOSCO. The idea was you're going to have all of these AI systems talking to each other and interacting. And it didn't work. And as a matter of fact, then they had something else called CPOF. The Army had something called CPOF, Command Post of the Future. Same thing. Oh, we're going to have all these screens deploying all this real-time information. You don't have to worry about all the data. The data is going to be self-managing. Yeah, it never happened. So I'm not. I'm serious.
You just described NGAD because you said the key word, the system of systems. You just described. And we can make an argument, and the Pentagon will make an argument. They'll say to you, you know, but Tony, that was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Bugs, you know, whatever. They'll say something like that. And arguably they're correct, right? I mean, they're right. I mean, 20 years ago, we were using flip phones, and now you and I can conduct this interview on a smartphone. I could be the beaches of Thailand if I wanted to. Realistically, and it's because of a smartphone. And
Look,
you'd be like, who would have thought of this?
No, I can do Newsmax interviews from pretty much anywhere I'm at now, literally, and they don't look bad. So, but
right. So again, like when you say, yeah, but 10 years ago they had the system idea and it failed. Right, it did. 10 years ago. That's the only answer the Pentagon's going to give you. We're 10 years into the future now, so maybe we've learned a lot more since.
Maybe it'll feel it won't fail as badly this time. Just saying.
Yeah, it won't fail as badly. Yeah,
I am all for it. No, Ken, I am all. Don't take my words as being negative. I am all for the idea of progress and things working, but that's what I'm for: progress and things working. Yeah. Not trying it again and hoping for the best. That hope is not a strategy. And I have to say this: I want an effective defense, not an expensive defense. So this is where I think I'm not against the whole idea of innovation. It's just that I've seen how innovation happens. And like you point out, it's like they spend a lot of money and hope for the best regarding something sticking. And you have some stick. But I think sometimes the Pentagon, in its enthusiasm to grasp for straws and gain something new, could do a better job of it. That's all I'm saying. So when we come back, we can take a break right now. When we come back, we'll talk more about kind of what the Pentagon could do better when it has to actually do real innovation. So anyway, today we're talking with Ken Rapoza. He is he's an industry analyst. Man, I can't speak today. But the Coalition of Prosperous America. We'll make sure he put his website up too. ProsperousAmerica.org staff. Ken Rapoza, he's on there too. So anyway, we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with more of Ken and our discussion regarding technology, the Pentagon, and what is best in our interest regarding funding and real requirements. So we'll be right back. Hey, this is the Hard Truth's Tony Shaffer, part 2. We are still powered by 6 Hour. I had a choice of what I carried in combat. I carried the best. I recommend you carry the best. The best is 6 Hour, never settle. Also, check out Swiss America. Call them today to check out their special Walking Liberty $50. It's an offer you can't refuse. 800-289-2646. Tell them Tony Shaffer sent you. Again, 800-289-2646. Swiss America. Get some hard currency. Hard currency. Silver, gold, whatever. In this case, we're talking about Walking Liberty $50. They will get you a great deal on those things. Anyway, we're a Project Sentinel, projectsentinel.com. And also you can hear our old shows at the Hard Truth with Tony. Oh, I forgot to mention we're on the America Out Loud network. Man, I'm going to get in trouble for that, leaving that out. So anyway, we're on America Out Loud Podcast Network and the America Out Loud Network. That's what we're on. Man, my goodness, we're broadcasting on that. There, I should pay attention to my notes more readily. Anyway, one last thing before I go is Cherie Curry does our bumper and theme music. God bless you, Cherie. She's off in Europe right now, right, Chris? Doing rock and roll.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she is. She's actually doing a nice tour over in Europe. Yes.
Yes, I keep seeing all of. Yeah, my goodness, I think I told you I ran into one of her colleagues on the plane a few weeks ago. Nelson from. Oh my God, I'll assume I'm having a
cheap trick.
Cheap trick. I'm having I'm having a Joe Biden moment. What was his name? Rick Nelson. Rick Nelson. I ran into Rick Nelson on the plane. Yeah, and he's 75, still rocking. So when you see him up there on stage playing Surrender, he's not surrendering to age, that's for sure. It's 75.
Mick Jagger's right? Like 100. He's still he's still right.
Did you know that he carried the first torch in the first Olympics back in Roman times? Mick Jagger.
Was he?
That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Was he with that chick wearing the blue? That chick with the blue Smurf or whatever that was in the opening ceremonies? Just kidding.
Oh gosh, let's not even go there. Let's just
Was that natural blue? Is that his natural color or is that artificial?
Probably.
She ate a snozberry, didn't she? Or he or whatever it was.
The snozberries taste like snozberries.
That's right.
That's a great movie too, by the way. So, super. Anyway, we got to get back to work here. So today our guest is probably annoyed by our geezing. Is Ken Rapoza. Ken is with the Coalition for a Prosperous America. He's the industry analyst, former foreign correspondent for the Wall Street Journal, great publication, and a senior contributor for Forbes covering China since 2011. I do actually use Forbes for a number of things regarding my own research. So, Ken, welcome back to the Hard Truth.
Hey, thanks for having me back, Tony. I'm ready for
So,
action.
yeah, it's good to go. So anyway, so Ken, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is you guys look at things. We've been talking about the F-35 and versus the follow-on sixth generation fighter the Air Force wants and probably will get. I don't disagree with you. My issue is innovation should be designed to actually fulfill the requirements which it's being designed to fulfill. Boy, that's a Kamala Harris comment if I've ever heard one, right? Those
Oh.
requirements should be fulfilled by the technology to fill those requirements, right? Yes. I'm sure she'll hire me as her spokesman next. Anyway, back to the topic though. The reason that the Air Force is trying to do this, as you've said in our first part of the show, is, well, China's doing it, so we got to keep up with the Chinese, right? I mean, that's kind of the premise here. We got to, they're doing things. I'm one of those who I do believe that China is growing as a threat in the Pacific. I do believe that there are things we should pay attention to. But do you believe, based on your understanding of China and where they're going, that the Chinese threat is a sufficient justification for this next generation fighter?
Okay, so in the Defense Intelligence Assessment, which they do every year by the Director of National Intelligence, they said that the Chinese military is not yet on par with the United States. And again, that means power and equipment, but they're getting there. And I think if I remember, the estimate is within 5 to 10 years, they'll be at least a peer competitor to the United States. So maybe right now they're not, okay, but they're getting there, all right? Now, again, the Pentagon is going to use this as a way to sell more programs, to get more defense appropriations for defense contractors, and so they can invent the next great weapon or the next new submarine, whatever it may be. They're going to use China as a reason to continue and spend money on new defense weaponry, like the new air dominance platform NGAD, as we've been talking about today. So China is not there on the sixth generation fighter. We only can know what they tell us, and they'll tell us that here's what it's going to look like, and we're almost there. But what you can believe them or not until the plane is flying in the air and lands and does what it's supposed to do. We're not going to know where they are. But they're a little bit further behind than we are. They're supposed to have their sixth generation beta plane is supposed to be flying, I believe, in 2035, if I remember correctly. And the NGAD fighter plane, which is going to replace the F-22 Raptor, that's supposed to be designed and built by 2030. Now, 2030 is only 6 years from now, and there is no bid yet on who is going to build that plane. So we have to assume that the bid is going to happen at some point this year, and it'll be Boeing or Lockheed Martin is my guess. They'll be the two that'll compete for it. And we assume that they already have something in the works in terms of, at least on the drawing board, right? And then we have to assume, again, that they can build this thing in 4 to 5 years, and we'll finally get to see what it looks like. But the United States is allegedly ahead in terms of building one of these sixth generation fighters, a system of systems, a plane that can fly with drones, command those drones, and command missile silos on land to do what the plane wants it to do. Okay, so again, the system of system approach. Now, are they going to do it? We don't know. Are they going to beat China to it? They say they will, but China again is further behind. But I could not tell you with all honesty. I mean, I guess I could pretend I'm an expert on CNN and I can know exactly what's going on, but no one does. Neither do they. I can tell you that. Just know that China's building one. They want to have it ready by 2035 is what they said. Usually China's on target, right? So we could assume it's going to be ready by 2035. And I don't know if we can assume that the United States plane is going to be ready by 2030. Because again, the Air Force is saying, we don't know if we have the money. The government, Congress is not willing to appropriate all of this funding because of our budget problems right now. Our deficit, I think, is 130% of GDP right now, which is one of the highest in the Western world. So the government doesn't have an appetite for these things. And the government is saying, okay, let's just keep running with the F-35 as much as we don't really like it, because we don't have the money to build a $300 million plane. Okay, so that's the story. So will they be ready by 2030? I don't know. Will they make one plane by 2030? Maybe. Will they have a fleet of them that can sit on the USS Gerald R. Ford in the Red Sea by 2030? I don't think so. But maybe they'll have one done by then, so we can see what it looks like. But again, China is always going to be used as the boogeyman. China's going to be the one to scare Congress into appropriating all this funding. So as the year goes on, if the Pentagon and the Air Force does not get fully funded or funded to its to any level, then I expect you'll hear them say, but China's doing it. China. This you'll hear. There'll be committee hearings about it. We got to move forward on this. We got to get the, and then the money will be appropriated. What exactly they needed, I don't know. I don't think the Air Force knows, and I believe the Air Force is telling us that it's not going to be what they want it to be. It's going to be small.
So that's a very clear explanation. I appreciate the way you laid it out. I think it's something that clearly we're going to hear a lot more about, and probably rightly so. But one of the things I do want to talk about that you mentioned the deficit, which is, in my judgment, a national security threat. I mean, the fact that we have $35 trillion and it's unchecked, and there's nobody talking about, even Trump. I haven't even heard Trump say anything about if he's reelected, he's going to jump on that. Cutting down the appetite of the federal government. So with that said, one of the areas which Joe Biden has funded a lot is the Inflation Reduction Act, which is also AKA the Undermining and Destroying the Middle Class Act, which really is, I think, the effects of it, because it focuses inappropriately on green energy and all these other things. I'm not against energy that is derived from natural sources or renewable sources. I've said a number of years ago that the DoD should be investing in solar, so for austere environments where fossil fuel may not be available. A little of something is better than nothing, and having something that can be used in an austere environment where maybe something's happened where you don't have access to fuel, it's a great thing to have. With that said, the idea of switching our entire industry, our entire economy over to a renewable system, which is not ready for prime time, I think is dangerous. So what do you think about this whole idea that DoD's saying it wants to switch over because of the quote unquote existential threat of climate change, which I've got a degree in environmental studies. I talk about this all the time. There's no existential threat. Again, I'm not against renewables. I'm against the idea of blindly going down that path and trying to switch over to tanks, batteries on tanks. We're going to have battery driven tanks. Like, it's not going to happen. But what say you on that?
Well, here's something very interesting. The Pentagon is going to install some solar on some military bases, and I believe even on the Pentagon or around the Pentagon. I'm not exactly sure. And the question is going to be, where is that solar going to be made? Because is it going to be a Chinese?
Great question. Yeah.
And they haven't answered that question yet. I've asked it myself. They haven't answered that question yet. I suspect it's going to be American made at this point, but you would think that they would say, oh, of course it's going to be. It has to be because of the law, the Inflation Reduction Act law, or the Buy American law for the government. Right. Law may be, whatever the regulation may be, my hunch is it's going to be American made, but they've never came out and said that, of course it's going to be, and it could be a Chinese multinational. There's one of them in Florida called Jinko Solar. It's a big Chinese solar producer, and they make solar panels right in Florida. So it could be Jinko Solar for all we know. That's going to be on the Pentagon's rooftop or any other military base. In the next few years as they switch to solar. The thing with the Inflation Reduction Act, is again, it was money for green energy by and large. I believe there was some money in there, some tax write-offs for hydrogen energy, but I don't know if that's really gone anywhere yet. There's been some dispute on that, and there's also been some money for mined goods like lithium or maybe graphite, stuff that would go into EV batteries. There's some debate as to whether the mining companies are getting any of that money yet. That's still up in the air. This is still in the works. But I will say this on green energy, right? And his thing is the biggest thing of all in that issue. So prior to Trump coming to town in 2016, the Western world was always always talking about moving to a post-fossil fuel economy. We've heard this for probably slowly since you mentioned Al Gore earlier on, since convenient truth, right? That the West had to move to a post-fossil fuel economy. We've got to have solar, we've got to have wind. And then natural gas became a big thing. So, okay, well, it's better than burning oil or it's better than burning coal. So natural gas, all right, that's the next thing for now, but eventually we want to move beyond that. That was the direction the West was going in.
Right.
China understood that. The West wants to move to a post-fossil fuel world. So China didn't say, okay, we're going to, lower our greenhouse gas emissions. They said, no, we are going to build all the tools and equipment you need to get there. We're going to build, we're going to build the wind turbine. We're going to build the EVs. Okay, so that's what China said. But here's the thing. That China's not the bad guy really in this. China was right to assume that was going to be the case because until 2016, until Trump became president and imposed tariffs on the Chinese economy and Chinese imports to the tune of about $350 billion, the West always was going to rely on China to be a manufacturer. Everything was going to be made there. They weren't going to make panels and crush silicon, quartz rock and throw the dust, down the Mississippi River.
Yeah.
To do that in China. And they were going to make the solar there. So they had no intention of making any of those products really in the United States.
Right.
There was no need to. I mean, you can make some of it here. You could make the innovative new stuff here. But the goal was always, the intention was wherever the market sees fit. And where's the market going to see fit? Well, if Ken and Tony are going to make a widget and it costs us $100 to make the widget in Texas, but it costs us $5 to make it in China or Mexico, where is Ken and Tony going to make the widget? Well, most people are going to make it where it costs $5 because I want a 90% profit or I want to make more money. I don't want to just break even. So I'm going to make it there. And that was obvious where things were going. So China has dominated that supply chain. And then the U.S. comes up with this Green New Deal, the Inflation Reduction Act, which was great for, solar production and so on. But all the companies that are really benefiting from the IRA in the United States, most of them are Chinese companies. So in other words, there's a lot of foreign companies that have set up shop in the United States to build new solar products, for example, factories, for example. But when you look, let's say there might be one from Germany, there might be two from South Korea, one from Israel, one from Canada. But when you look at the number of companies that have come from one country, that one country is China. So I think there's like 5 companies from China that are setting up shop here. No other country has that greenfield projects that they're building in the United States. And that's because China just dominates that supply chain. And now Europe is worried about it because of EVs. All the EVs are coming from China to Europe. They're worried about it because of wind, because Europe used to dominate the wind sector. They were big wind manufacturers. Now the Chinese are catching up with them through a company called Goldwind Technologies. Goldwind Science and Technology is now tied for first place with one of the big European companies. I think it's called Vestas. The Netherlands. So now they're worried about that. But you guys came up with this idea to go post-fossil fuels, and you had no industry in the United States to build it. We have one EV producer in the United States. It's Tesla. And if it wasn't for Tesla, which is really a pioneer in the EV space, you would have none. I mean, GM, that's not their core business, EVs. They got to redo everything. They got to redo their entire business model to afford to make an EV. And of course they're relying on the Asian battery producers to power those cars, so as is Tesla. Tesla doesn't have its own battery. It relies on Japanese Panasonic batteries or Chinese, what's called CATL. That's the company that makes a lot of the Tesla batteries, depending on the model. So, these guys decide in the West, we're going to go to a post-fossil fuel world, and we don't have any industry to make it. And now they've been really caught with their pants down because, like I said, since 2016, when we decided to decouple from China in any way, shape, or form, they realized, wait a minute, now we want to go post fuel, but we really don't have any industry to make it. We're getting beat by China on wind, we're getting beat by China on EVs, we're getting beat by China on solar. Now what do we do? So it's a big conundrum for Europe and the United States, and China just played us like a fiddle. They said, you want to do that, fine, everything for you. And they had every right to think that because that was the way the world was going, and that was certainly the way manufacturing and investment was going in China's favor until around 2017.
The good old Inflation Enhancement Act. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Trump, I'm thinking, I was reading through your op-ed about the NGAD platform, and I was also reading something on defensenews.com about a next generation fighter, not dead but needs cheaper redesign, says Secretary Frank Kendall. So I'm thinking, and this might be a really broad question, might be too big for just a few minutes. Good. But when Trump is in the White House again, how do you think he would deal with because it is it's going to be incredibly expensive to create these. How do you think he's going to deal with the budget cuts and the budget pressure against the
question? Honestly, Trump has always said, no one's built a better military than me. So one would assume that Trump is all gung-ho on NGAD, and the military is going to love that, right?
Yeah, I'm sure.
And, so, and maybe that's a way that Trump can throw a bone towards the Pentagon, right? And these generals who are pretty much anti-Trump, right?
They are.
Yeah, they are.
Pretty much.
Really weren't helping Trump. So maybe you throw them the bone of NGAD. How much you need? You need $1 trillion. Boom, done, sold. You got it. And then maybe they'll lay off. Maybe the intelligence committee will lay off. I really don't know. on the intelligence side, but maybe the Pentagon and the generals will be happy with him because of that.
Yeah.
I would that Trump would be more likely to throw the Air Force all the money it needs, or at least advocate for it. Because again, that is not a decision. That is not Biden's decision. Biden might want to give them $100 bazillion, but
right. But I think he can have pressure. He can have influence on that. So I was just wondering what you
trust
think
me,
he would do.
Ken, you're right. He's going to give them the money.
He's
I would, if I'm one of the advisors, I'm going to say,
yeah,
I don't
well,
think
there's
it's
so
the
much
wisest
wasteful. I
investment,
can
but
think of so
understand the
many
political need.
programs in the federal government that he could easily get rid of, and he would, to then take that money and then give it to the Air Force. There's just so much wasted. You know what I mean?
I think you might see stuff like that in the first administration of Trump. We saw what they did with regulations, for example, right? We saw how they gutted things like that. I mean, that might have led to some cuts in certain agencies. I don't know if there were layoffs of certain employees in certain agencies because the regulations were rolled back, and now you didn't need pushers and watchdogs to make sure those regulations were being followed. Maybe those people were laid off or placed somewhere else. I don't know. So then we could say, if that was the case, oh look, the EPA, budget was cut because the regulations were cut. It was cut by $10 million. Okay, that's flies in the ointment, right, as the cliche goes, right? That's not that thing in the overall scheme of government spending. Where would you cut across the board? I really don't know, but I'm sure there's plenty of places where Trump would cut. But again, that boils down to Congress, and if he doesn't have a Republican Congress that's willing to make the cuts, then he can talk about cutting all he wants. And the Democrats.
Oh yeah.
So Ken, you're an industrial analyst. You've looked at this. What do you make of the fact that no party, neither Democrat or Republicans, have paid attention to strategic reserves relating to critical minerals like lithium, critical production? We've essentially outsourced most of the things we need, everything from drugs to critical materials such as you point out. You hardly can get American-made electronics now. What do you make of that?
Okay, so on the mining side, of course, it's always been an issue of the EPA, right? And mining is
always
dirty, messy job, right? So so people think, and again, to explain it to laymen, you're pulling rocks out of the ground, and then you're going to pound those rocks into a powder that's going to be turned into geochemistry to turn into some sort of energy source to go into a battery or wherever it ends up. But that's a messy thing, and the EPA, they don't really want it. Of course, we could do it cleaner than China because China just takes that dust and probably throws it.
Right, exactly. Well, I think you made. We have to get to the other thing, but Ken, I'd like to have you come back and do another discussion on this whole issue regarding defense industry and where we're going overall regarding production and things like that, because I think we've neglected being invested like Russia. I don't want to go down this path, but Russia never gave up all of the industrial components necessary to put their economy back on a war footing. That's one of the reasons they've sustained themselves despite our best efforts. And nobody seems to understand, the Soviets, when they became Russia, never divested themselves of maintaining some level of control over industry, which has benefited them now. We don't seem to have that thinking. And I think if we ever have to actually go to war again, we're going to suffer from not having made that investment. Just saying, Ken. I'd like to.
Well, of course, industry is very important. If you're going to outsource all your industry, it's a problem, right? And that's what the United States has certainly done. And I can tell you this, as someone who watches Capitol Hill closely, there is a handful of members of Congress who know that and talk about it and complain about it all the time. So that message is getting out and it's understood.
Good. Well, we should come back and talk about that if you'd like at some point, Ken. I would really love to have you back on that, if that's okay.
Well, actually, we have Tony's Takes. Tony's Takes is the celebrated section of the program, and it is powered by Sig Sauer. Never settle.
Never settle.
But we did settle, and I'm going to talk about that. I want to get your take on that. So, lots been celebrated about the release of American prisoners from Russia.
Oh.
Yes. The 6-country swapped 24 prisoners. We get Evan Gershkovich back and Paul Whelan this week. They had to wait because a while ago, Biden had to rush to get that Grenier chick from the WNBA over here.
Grenier,
right. Well, here you go. You always have to think, who did Russia get back in return? Well, they got a professional hitman, Putin's pal, hitman Vadim Krasikov back. So, again, he gets what he wants. He gets one of his henchmen back, a very important part, and we get. And we're pretty much telling him, "Hey, you can take more prisoners. You get more of our bad guys back." What's your take, Tony?
Yeah. So my take is that as I always say, Putin's a thug, and his thug buddies are his best buddies. Just saying. I think this is a thug buddy. Isn't that a thing?
A thug pal, yes.
Should we copyright that, thug buddy? Well, it's like you got thunder buddies and you got thug buddies. So this is a
Thunder
thug buddy.
buddies.
He looks like somebody I'd like to invite to a party. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, he's your muscle. He could be your muscle,
He could
Elizabeth.
be my
it's like, hey,
bodyguard.
here's my thug buddy. Don't do anything I'm upset about. You will regret it.
I don't know how much I'd have to pay him though, but anyway.
Well, the last time he gets his international arms dealer guy too. So you know what? Putin always comes out on top when it comes to these things.
This could be a great Saturday Night Live skit if they actually were funny. It's like
Well, that's what his
what do
wife
you
said.
do to get your thug buddy back? Well,
I don't think anybody on Saturday Night. I'd like to see Kenan Thompson play this Russian guy if that's the case. That would be funny.
Yeah, that'd be good. I can see that.
Quickly, we can do one more. Okay,
All right,
I want to get your thoughts on this. It's an Olympic question, but it's not what you think. The Paris Olympic opening ceremonies may have been annoying, but still, it's not the worst of the woke Olympics. An example of its PC insanity is making female boxers fight biological men. Italy's Angela Carini had to, for her own safety and her own Olympics fight against this Imani Khalif, a biological male tested to have had the XY chromosomes. She said she'd never been hit so hard. When are they going to figure this stuff out? When someone gets crippled or killed?
It's already happened. No, my take is it's already happened. There was a male pretending to be a female in volleyball and actually caused someone to be slammed and injured to the point of they have brain damage. So I don't care how you feel. I'm appalled by any use of male XYZ chromosomes. What is it? They got the XYZ, JFK, MNOP. Who knows what it is? But
LGBTQ.
It's got LGBTQ, XYZ.
MAP, stuff like that. Yes.
So I think it's dangerous. Someone's going to die, and I just don't think that we should be opening this door. Oh, by the way, why have women's sports at all if you're going to open it up to male? Really? I mean, why even have a women's league if you're going to let men go in there?
I've always said if the trans people, if the men pretending to be women don't want to fight real men, then why don't they create their own sport?
Yeah.
Let's have men pretending to be women fighting against other men pretending to be women.
Exactly.
That makes
the only
sense.
thing I'll give them is that I do believe that we should be much more open to wearing kilts. So everybody wears kilts, and everybody wears something that you can have the wind blowing up your nether reason. Why not? Wahoo! There you go. See, we could all have knee socks and kilts. That could be the uniform of the army, right? See, there you go, Ken. I gave you an idea.
I'm never wearing a kilt or a dress.
Go ask the Pentagon about a unisex kilt, so everybody can wear skirts from now on, right?
That might be in a handbook somewhere. Right?
I mean, Lloyd Austin. Think about this as an idea. You could go to Lloyd Austin, and by the way, I know his spokesman. Pat Ryder and I are friends. Go ask Pat on my behalf. Tell him Tony sent you, and say, hey, Tony says we should go to a single uniform of kilts. And oh, by the way, if you got Lloyd Austin wearing a kilt, you could also have him have that face shield. It also was a solar panel, so he could self-power the Pentagon through his solar power helmet. Wouldn't that be a great idea, Ken? I mean, all for one.
Genius.
I bet it's an AR-670-1 somewhere. AR-670-1.
That's right. So, well, enough hilarity for this week. Ken, thanks for being a good sport, joining us for our bonus round of Tony's Takes, and we'll be joined again next week by the full team. And until then, we'll see you then. We'll see you in the movies, because you're gonna see me this weekend on doing stuff on Newsmax as well. And then check out Chris and I. We're hosting 3 days a week now.
Wake Up
Patriots on Rumble. Yeah, it's fun.
We have
a
lot of
interact
fun,
with us. You can actually text us, and we try to text you back. So. Although I want to learn how to read someday so I can actually write, but that's aspirational in my mind. So.
Think about it. Tony's takes for a full hour.
Full hour, yeah.
That's pretty much what it is, yeah. So anyway, well, until next week, we'll see you all. Thanks for being here on The Hard Truth, and keep coming back.